Usually, when we talk about a comedian bombing on stage, we're dealing with a metaphor. You picture like a silent room, maybe some polite coughing or a heckler in the back.
Right, yeah. The stakes are usually just bruised egos.
Exactly. But today, we're starting with a very literal and honestly really shocking contrast. So picture this. It's June of 1980.
Okay.
A man is running down a street in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. And he's not just running. His entire upper body is engulfed in flames.
It's just, it's a horrifying image.
It really is. He had been freebasing cocaine.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know the chemistry of that, freebasing involves using a highly flammable solvent.
Right, in this case, I think it was 151 proof rum.
Yeah, exactly. You use it to strip impurities from cocaine so it can be smoked. So he's essentially building this small, volatile bomb right in his living room.
Which is just incredibly dangerous.
Right. So he struck a match, the fumes ignited, and he suffered third-degree burns over half his body. I mean, it is this agonizing moment of near-fatal self-destruction.
And, normally surviving something like that means retreating.
Yeah, you'd think so.
It means skin grafts, years of quiet recovery, and, probably never speaking of the trauma publicly. The shame and the horror are just too immense for most people.
But here is where it gets absolutely surreal. Just 2 years later, that same man is standing on a stage on the Sunset Strip.
Unbelievable.
He's looking out at a sold-out crowd, and he's holding a lit match. He waves it around and says, "What's that? It's Richard Pryor running down the street."
Wow.
Right. And then he tells this crowd that the fire actually started because he dunked a cookie into a glass of low-fat milk, and it caused a massive chemical explosion.
And the crowd just loses it.
They are roaring with laughter. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today we are exploring the life, the mind, and the profound legacy of Richard Pryor.
It's such a heavy, fascinating story.
It really is. And our mission for you listening today is to understand how a kid raised in an Illinois brothel managed to distill his profound personal trauma into, honestly, the highest evolution of American comedy.
Yeah, to get there, you really have to look at comedy, not just as entertainment, but as a survival mechanism.
Totally. It's like he took the darkest, most terrifying monsters hiding in his closet, dragged them out into the spotlight, and dressed them up in clown shoes so we could all laugh at them together.
That's a great way to put it. Because to understand how Pryor could joke about literally smelling his own burning flesh, we have to look at the environment that forged him.
Right.
For Richard Pryor, chaos wasn't an interruption of a normal life. I mean, chaos was the baseline.
So let's start with that baseline. He was born in 1940 in Peoria, Illinois, and he grew up in a brothel. But not just hanging around one, he was living in one that was actually run by his own grandmother, Marie Carter.
Yeah, and consider the parental figures in that house. Yeah. His mother, Gertrude, was a prostitute, and she ultimately abandoned him when he was just 10 years old.
Jeez.
And his father, Leroy, was a former boxer, a hustler, and a pimp. So his primary caregiver, the person setting the rules of his entire universe, was his grandmother.
Yeah, a grandmother who, from the sources, is described as this incredibly strict, towering figure. She would actually slap him for his eccentricities.
Yeah, she was brutal.
But he still loved her deeply.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a child in that environment.
It's hard to even imagine.
Your primary source of love and stability is also dispensing harsh physical punishment. And doing it in a house where human intimacy is just a cold business transaction happening in the next room.
Well, the psychological macking there is profound, right?
Yeah.
A child in that environment learns immediately that the world is a dangerous, hypocritical place.
Yeah, for sure.
Pryor's childhood basically stripped away any illusions about that polite, sanitized version of America that was being sold on, black and white television in the 1950s.
Right, the Leave It to Beaver America.
Exactly. And on top of the environment itself, he experienced direct, horrible trauma. He was sexually abused at the age of 7.
Oh, man.
And he was expelled from school by the time he was 14. So to survive that living room, he had to become this hypervigilant observer.
Constantly reading the room.
Yes. He had to learn to spot the tragic, comic absurdities of human nature instantly, just to know if he was safe or in danger.
And that anger and trauma, obviously, it didn't just magically vanish when he grew up and left Peoria.
No, not at all.
He joined the U.S. Army in 1958, but he spent most of that entire 2-year stint in an army prison.
Which is wild. He was stationed in West Germany, and the incident that landed him in prison is incredibly revealing about his mindset.
Right. Tell them about the movie theater.
So he was at a screening of the 1959 Douglas Sirk film, Imitation of Life. It's this melodrama that deals heavily with racial passing, discrimination, and deep emotional pain for its black characters.
Okay.
And a white soldier in the theater was apparently highly amused by these racially charged, painful scenes and just started laughing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Pryor, along with several other black soldiers, just attacked him. They beat and actually stabbed the man.
It escalated to violence instantly.
Instantly. Fortunately, the soldier survived.
Right.
But it shows that Pryor's reactions to racial indignity were raw. They were unfiltered and just living right on the surface.
But see, this leaves me totally confused. If you grow up with that much raw, unfiltered reality, and you have this hair-trigger temper regarding racial injustice,
Yeah.
how do you even begin to translate yourself to the 1960s entertainment industry? Because this was an era obsessed with thin ties, polite manners, and being completely scrubbed clean.
Well, the short answer is you don't translate yourself, you hide.
You hide.
Yeah. You put on a mask and pretend to be someone else entirely.
Which perfectly explains his early days in New York City. So he moves there in 1963, and there is this incredible anecdote from the legendary singer Nina Simone.
I love this story.
Pryor was opening for her at the Village Gate, and he wasn't this confident, swaggering comic we think of today. He was completely paralyzed by stage fright.
Just terrified.
Simone actually recalled that he shook so badly from anxiety that she literally had to hold him in the dark backstage. She rocked him like a baby for several nights just to calm him down enough to walk to the microphone.
That is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But that anxiety, it stems from the sheer effort of maintaining the mask.
Right?
When he first started out, Pryor was a middle-brow comic. He was heavily inspired by Bill Cosby, who was, the absolute gold standard for black comedians at the time.
Cosby was seen as totally non-threatening to white audiences.
Exactly. So Pryor kept his material very safe, very clean, because that was the required ticket to get on the Ed Sullivan Show or the Merv Griffin Show.
And to book those really lucrative Las Vegas stages.
Right.
But wait, if he's booking Vegas and getting on national TV, the mask is working, right? He's achieving the dream of every working comic in the 1960s, so why throw that away?
Because living inside someone else's persona, when you have that much internal pressure, it's suffocating.
It's got to be exhausting.
It is. Which brings us to September 1967 at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas.
The turning point.
The turning point. Dean Martin is actually sitting in the sold-out audience. Pryor walks onto the stage, looks out at this crowd that's expecting, mild, polite chuckles about childhood.
Right, everyday observations.
Yeah. And he completely breaks. He just shouts into the microphone, "What the fuck am I doing here?" And he walks off the stage.
So it wasn't like a crafted joke. It was a genuine crisis of identity.
Exactly. It was a creative birth disguised as a breakdown.
Whoa.
Pryor realized in that moment that playing it safe was killing his actual genius. I mean, he couldn't pretend the brothel in Peoria didn't exist anymore. He traded mainstream comfort for radical authenticity.
It's kind of like tearing down a perfectly good, expensive house because you realize you're living in someone else's floor plan, right?
That's a great analogy.
Just so you can build this raw, messy cabin out of your own truth. Going back to the idea of comedy as a survival mechanism, the Cosby mask was just a lid on a boiling pot.
Yeah, and the pressure was building.
What Pryor needed wasn't a lid. He needed an exhaust valve for a pressure cooker. Because that pressure, the racial tension, the childhood trauma, it was incredibly dangerous.
If he kept it sealed, he'd explode.
Exactly. By walking off that stage, he started building a valve where he could release that pressure in these controlled, rhythmic bursts of laughter so the whole room didn't blow up.
And to build that valve, he moved to Berkeley, California in 1969.
Very different vibe from Vegas.
Totally. He immersed himself in the counterculture. He met intellectuals and Black Panther activists like Huey P. Newton.
Okay.
And he started bringing profanity into his act. He brought the N-word into his act.
The real language of his life.
Yes. He started bringing the pimps, the hustlers, and the winos from the Peoria brothel to life on stage.
Yeah.
But he didn't treat them as caricatures.
No, they were fully fleshed out.
Right. Human beings with dignity and profound philosophical insights. He finally started speaking his actual language.
And he found an audience incredibly hungry for that truth, which leads to this period of massive radical success in the 1970s.
Huge success.
But it also creates this constant grinding friction with the establishment because he's releasing these boundary-pushing comedy albums that become massive hits.
Oh, yeah, like his 1974 album, That Nigger's Crazy, which actually won a Grammy.
And it was so wildly successful that it sparked a massive legal battle over his recording rights between Laugh and Stax Records.
He was suddenly too profitable to ignore, but way too provocative to control.
And you see that tension play out in Hollywood, too. Take the movie Blazing Saddles in 1974.
Oh, this is a perfect example.
He co-wrote it with Mel Brooks and was actually supposed to star in a lead role of Bart, the black sheriff.
Right, but he was sidelined. And the accounts of why are totally conflicting in the sources.
How so?
Well, Mel Brooks claimed that Warner Brothers executives vetoed Pryor because of his history of drug arrests. They said he was uninsurable.
Okay, that sounds like a standard Hollywood excuse.
Right, but the film's director, Michael Schultz, claimed that Brooks actually chased Pryor out of the role so Brooks could take total credit for the picture.
Wow. I mean, we may never know the absolute truth of those boardroom conversations, but it illustrates the dynamic perfectly.
It really does.
The industry desperately wanted his brilliant, edgy mind in the writer's room, but they were terrified of putting his unfiltered presence front and center on the screen.
And television had the exact same dilemma.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't resist his cultural gravity, but they were terrified of his unpredictability.
Right, like when he hosted Saturday Night Live in 1975.
Yes, which produced one of the most famous and tense sketches in television history, the word association skit with Chevy Chase.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, Chevy Chase is playing this corporate interviewer, and Pryor is the job applicant. Chase starts a word association test. It begins harmlessly. Chase says dog, Pryor says tree, but then Chase starts introducing racial terms.
Right.
He says Negro, Pryor says whitey, and the terms escalate. They become more offensive and aggressive until Chase finally drops the N-word.
And the tension in the live studio audience is palpable. You can literally feel the oxygen leave the room.
Pryor's face twitches. He leans in and he responds with, dead honky.
Doing that on live television in 1975 was just unfathomable. It was dangerous.
Yeah.
But Pryor was forcing America to look at large social questions of race right in the face.
But the networks couldn't handle that danger on a regular basis. I mean, when he co-hosted the Academy Awards, network censors put him on a rare 5-second delay.
They were so scared of what he might say.
And then they gave him his own variety show, The Richard Pryor Show, in 1977. It only lasted 4 episodes.
And it lasted 4 episodes because he flat out refused to bow to network censors.
Good for him.
Yeah, this is a show where he did a skit portraying the first black president of the United States holding a press conference.
Revolutionary for the time.
Very. And another where he used visual distortion to appear completely nude on screen. He was basically suggesting he was giving the network exactly what they wanted by stripping himself bare.
That is so subversive.
The network actually offered him 10 episodes, but Pryor walked away. He said he had said everything he needed to say in 4.
He was also constantly challenging himself, though, not just the audience or the network. In 1979, he took a trip to Kenya.
A hugely transformative trip.
He comes back from Africa and famously swears off ever using the N-word in his act again.
Right.
He had an awakening, looking around and seeing black people running the government, running the businesses, and he realized he had been using a term of degradation.
It was a massive shift for him.
But I have to point out the irony of his career trajectory here. He's making millions by being unfiltered. Hollywood censorship fails to tone him down.
Yeah.
So what do? They try to buy his compliance. What happens when you give an anti-establishment rebel a $40 million contract?
Well, the money and the fame just act as an accelerant. A $40 million contract doesn't fix the internal pain or the childhood trauma.
Right.
It just funds a much more dangerous, elaborate escape.
So by 1980, he is at the absolute peak of the mountain. He becomes the first black actor to earn $1 million for a single film starring in Stir Crazy. And he signs that staggering $40 million deal with Columbia Pictures.
But behind the scenes, the foundation is completely crumbling.
How bad was it?
Really bad. During the filming of Stir Crazy, there's this highly publicized incident. A crew member threw a piece of watermelon on set, tossing it like a frisbee.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Pryor quit on the spot, citing racism, and he only returned to finish the film when the camera operator who threw it was fired.
Pryor obviously viewed that as a deep racial insult.
He did, but his co-star, Gene Wilder, had a different perspective.
What did Wilder say?
Wilder believed Pryor's erratic behavior, like the extreme lateness and sudden demands, were heavily fueled by Pryor's escalating drug use.
Which points to the reality of what was happening off camera. I mean, Pryor's drug use was spiraling into psychosis.
It really was. His widow, Jennifer Lee, gave a haunting assessment of this period.
What did she say?
She said she actually had to move out of their home because cocaine had, in her words, become his lover, and that she did not exist.
That is chilling. And it brings us back to June 1980, the freebasing incident we opened with.
Right.
The fire wasn't just a sudden freak accident where a man made a clumsy mistake with a match.
No. It was the terrifying climax of a long descent. His daughter, Rain, explicitly described that night as a bout of drug-induced psychosis.
Wow.
Yeah, he was trapped in a paranoia so deep that self-immolation felt like the only way out.
But here's the true testament to his genius. He survives the burns, he goes through agonizing physical therapy, and his choice is to turn the absolute darkest, most painful night of his life into stand-up material for his film Live on the Sunset Strip.
That is the exhaust valve working at maximum capacity.
Exactly. He takes the horror of smelling his own skin burn, processes it through his comedic genius, and releases it as laughter.
It proved that his comedy wasn't just a performance, it was how he survived his own mind.
But the private pain didn't stop when the microphone was turned off, did it?
Not at all. The private Richard Pryor behind the curtain was searching for connection, for love, and for identity, just as frantically as he searched for laughs.
And his personal life mirrored the chaos of his professional life entirely.
I mean, he was married 7 times.
To 5 different women.
Right. That means he married and divorced and then remarried 2 of them.
And he fathered 7 children.
Yeah. And his search for identity extended to his complex sexuality, too.
Right. Biographers, his widow Jennifer Lee, and music legend Quincy Jones have all stated that Pryor was openly bisexual.
There were even claims he had a relationship with Marlon Brando.
Wait, Marlon Brando?
Yeah. Now, his daughter, Rain, disputed those claims about Brando, though Pryor's widow suggested Rain was simply in denial about her father's lifestyle.
Interesting, but Pryor himself was actually quite open about his fluidity in his own writings, right?
He was. In his autobiography, he wrote about a 2-week relationship with a trans woman named Matrasha. And at a 1977 gay rights show at the Hollywood Bowl, he stood on stage and openly admitted to having a homosexual relationship in his youth.
He was a man who just refused to be neatly categorized by anyone, even himself.
It's a staggering amount of complexity.
It really is. But amidst all of this chaos, all the trauma, the drug-induced psychosis, and the broken marriages, there is this surprising, almost boundless well of empathy.
That's the part that catches people off guard.
Right. This same guy who is freebasing cocaine and fighting with studio executives is also a fierce animal rights activist.
Yeah, he fundraised for PETA, he campaigned aggressively against KFC's treatment of birds, and he was a vegetarian.
How do you reconcile that?
You kind of have to view those contradictions as 2 sides of the same coin. He was a man capable of immense cruelty, both to his own body and to the women and children closest to him.
Right.
Yet he simultaneously possessed a deep, profound empathy for the vulnerable, whether that was marginalized people living in the inner city or circus elephants.
Because having grown up powerless in a brothel, he understood powerlessness intimately.
Exactly. When he saw an animal in a cage, he recognized the cage, and he used his immense voice to advocate for those who had none.
Eventually, though, his physical body begins to fail him. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1986.
In true to form, he refused to let the disease rob him of his perspective.
Yeah, he grimly joked that MS simply stood for more shit.
That is so Pryor.
He lost his mobility, relying on a scooter for his final years, and passed away from a fatal heart attack in 2005. I want you, listening right now, to just imagine trying to contain all those multitudes in one single lifetime.
It's overwhelming.
You have an ex-pimp's son, a millionaire movie star, a trailblazing comic, a PETA activist, and a guy who goes to war with network sensors, all operating inside one brain. It's like the classic myth of Icarus flying too close to the sun, but in Pryor's case, he was his own son. He was the one generating the heat that burned him.
And it was the friction of all those identities grinding against each other that created the sparks of his comedy. When the Kennedy Center gave him the very first Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, they were acknowledging exactly that. He didn't just tell jokes, he provided a mirror for American culture.
From a brothel in Peoria to what Dave Chappelle called the highest evolution of comedy. He took the pain of his childhood, the deep-seated racism of America, and his own devastating personal flaws, and he just held them all up to the light.
Bill Cosby, despite his own complex and deeply controversial legacy, once provided what is perhaps the most accurate assessment of Pryor's art.
What did he say?
He said, Richard Pryor drew the line between comedy and tragedy as thin as one could possibly paint it.
Wow, that's perfect.
He didn't preach to his audience, he bled on stage, and he made us laugh while he did it.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to mull over. Today, we live in a heavily curated world where comedians, celebrities, and influencers constantly overshare their personal trauma.
Oh, constantly.
Ah,
We see it on social media every single day.
right. Trauma is packaged and used for clicks, for personal branding, for a calculated kind of relatability. But when Richard Pryor was building that exhaust valve, taking his deepest shame and speaking it into a microphone, there was no template for that.
None. There was no reward for vulnerability and absolutely no safety net.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, if a young Richard Pryor started performing today, in an era where being raw is often just a carefully managed marketing strategy, would we even be able to recognize his kind of dangerous life or death honesty? Or would we just mistake the fire for another filter?
That is a really great question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the brilliant, complicated legacy of the artists who shaped our world.